Good morning, good evening, or maybe it's good afternoon, depending on the time you've joined us here for Eat the Storms, the poetry podcast. My name is Damien B Donnelly. I'm the host and producer, and welcome to episode 1, season 7 of the podcast that is now available on multiple platforms, including Spotify, Apple, Google, Breaker, Podbean, Pocket Cast, Castbox, Overcast, and iTunes. I am delighted to be back with you again and so grateful to each person who listens in, encouraging me to continue to make more episodes. And here we are, somehow already starting season 7. It has been an incredible journey of community building. I know now more poets than I ever thought possible and more poets than I ever knew existed, and it's all because of you. And this season we have another fantastic lineup with renowned poets reading next to new writers just taking their first steps onto the airwaves. The podcast might have been on a break recently, but it certainly doesn't feel like that, because last month, in order to celebrate Poetry Day Ireland, Eat the Storms gathered together 32 poets, each one representing one of the 32 counties on this glorious island of Ireland. And each one read one poem to represent their county. And following that, you'd think I'd put my feet up, but no, it was time to get ready to open submissions for issue 3 of The Storms, our printed journal of poetry, prose and visual arts that has literally taken the world by storm with its first 2 issues. And now here we are back with another whirlwind. And this time I'm so excited to be joined by the exceptional Congolese-Irish poet Nitty Casa. Nitty was on the show just a few seasons ago, reading from her debut collection published by Dira Press called Palm Wine Tapper and the Boy at Jericho. And thankfully she will be back with us again this season, so you'll be hearing more about Nitty, the journal and our poetic adventures in publishing during the course of these coming episodes. But for now, let's stick with this episode and a really fantastic show we have lined up for you today. Every episode of the show this season, we are going to be featuring or celebrating someone who has just or is about to publish a new collection. And our first guest today is that recently published poet, thanks to our friends at Flight of the Dragonfly Spoken Word. So, you should know the drill by now. Why don't you sit back, put up your feet, make sure there's a drink handy and a slice of cake or some tasty treat. My name is Damien B Donnelly. This is Eat the Storms, and I hope you enjoy the show. And so that first guest today is a returning stormer and, as I said, our recently published author. His debut pamphlet, The Liquid Air, was published by Dreek in July 2021, followed by a Chris Riddle illustrated version of that pamphlet in August 2022, and just this month, Flight of the Dragonfly Press published his first full collection called The Fish Inside. Out of the poetry spotlight, he is a secondary school teacher living in Brighton, originally from Oban. He writes about self-imposed exile, place, relationships, cultural identity and memory. You will no doubt know him from many appearances in online journals and print, and he is also graciously reading a poem today which appeared in the inaugural issue of The Storms. I still truly cannot believe that I have a podcast, let alone an actual printed journal that people are reading and submitting their work to. So I am truly taken aback. I am absolutely thrilled to welcome back to the podcast an honorary member of the East Kilbride rock group The Moes. This is Andy Breckenridge.
Hello everybody, my name's Andy. I'm here to read 5 poems from my recently published collection, The Fish Inside, which is available from Flight of the Dragonflies Press. Thanks so much, Damien, for having me back on East the Storms. It's a real pleasure. I've got 5 poems for you today from the collection. The first one I'm going to read is called Tartanalia, and it's how it sometimes feels being very distant from the part of the world where you were brought up. Tartanalia. I stand outside your window at night, waiting for you to open the blinds and see my tartan face and the whites of my eyes shot with bloodlines, green irises popping. See how the plain silver kilt pins jawbone my skin together in the wind. See how symmetrical and intricately blocked I am. Each sawtooth of green dovetails with dark blue in a precise matrix. See how the straps and buckles fit so neatly through the slits in my waist. Hold fast. I was that night bus that snagged on departure from Glasgow Buchanan Street and unravelled en route to London Victoria to help you find your way back. Now I frown at your lack of fealty and the accents of your kids and yours. While you sleep, I'll slip sliver after sliver of tablet onto your tongue until your teeth pop like light bulbs. See my grid lines keep everything in check, stretch to infinity like a spreadsheet, weighing up the debits and credits. You are in the red. That's me peering in right now, an arrow slit of borrowed moonlight. That's my breath, that's me hanging lifeless in your wardrobe, following you in the car, lurking on shortbread tins and tea towels as you scurry past gift shops at airports, avoiding eye contact. Weigh me. Is my cloth too rich and heavy? Morning light slides past the blinds again, and the first trains shake me out of the air. I should have mentioned the extremely strong confectionery item tablet mentioned in that poem, in case you're not familiar with it. The next poem I'd like to read is for a dear friend of mine who passed away shortly before the collection was published, and it's in the collection is dedicated in his memory. The poem is called What Victor Borgia Said, for HP. It was published in the first issue of The Storms as well, which was very pleasing. What Victor Borgia Said, for HP. The kitchen tap spurts in stifled giggles, then 3 guffaws punch the basin. Airlocks convulse and groan in pipes, before the flow regulates into laughter is the shortest distance between two people, said Victor Borgia. Like the day after the West Brom game, a spring afternoon, we sat outside in the sun, drained our pints and eyes for 40 days and 40 nights. The next poem I'd like to read is to do with grief and how it feels to miss somebody important at Christmas. It's called That First Christmas. There is a tingling in the spine that stops as you peel back the paper and you realise grief is a model fighter plane. It's finished. The 2 fuselage pieces overlap slightly. The stickers affixed off whack and the nodes where it snapped off the plastic frame protrude. The body is pale grey, but you painted it pale grey anyway. A hardened droplet of excess glue grips the undercarriage and smudged fingerprints taint the wings. It dangles lopsided from the ceiling for a fortnight, then nosedives on the carpet. You box it up and hide it in the loft. By next Christmas, it's buried in landfill. The next poem I'd like to read for you is a coming out of lockdown poem where you begin to realise you can go out again and do all kinds of nice things. This one has got 2 references to Scottish words. One word is fankle, which means a tangled mess of something. And the other word is slater, which I believe is used in Northern Ireland and Australia as well. And the word slater is a woodlouse in England. The rediscovery of beads. Consider the green tin plate on the chest of drawers, containing the tangled heap of necklaces, a jostle of threaded colour, a camper's helping of confused solar systems strung across each other's orbits. You scoop them up like frog-spawn fossils and they clatter, leaving them metal. In the fankle you find an anti-poll tax badge and a thin silver bangle. See euros scatter like slaters from under. You carefully unravel light years of going out, choosing the pale blue planets for later. Thanks again for having me on the show again, Damien. A real pleasure. And I'd like to finish off with a poem dedicated to my daughter, which I was written quite a while ago now. This is The Night You Were Born for NFB. That night she's on all fours in the birthing pool with small red clouds like angry seahorses, and you, half out, head first and still submerged. That night she yells, "Get it out, it's drowning, drowning." The midwife smiles. The baby has never known air, so hasn't learned to drown. The day before in the shopping centre we buy a giant wardrobe big enough for a family of otters. The night before I dreamed of tadpoles in the soup of a sink among moss and long, thick grass. 13 ticks stuck fast gorge on me. One cuts gills and punches out limbs and hauls itself over the edge towards the water. The next day I hold you in a white blanket and look out the window to the sea, where you broke the surface, came ashore. Thanks again.
For this first episode back for season 7, I'm delighted to welcome a duo to the podcast, and not just any duo, but renegades of literary fiction. Two writers with 18 titles between them, who describe themselves as street smart, experimental and lyrical, and together they form Screaming Skull Press. They are a husband and wife team, and kicking us off first today is the wife, who was born in Youngstown, Ohio, where her love of music, painting and writing started early on and has continued to spread itself out through her adult life. Canada was the first location to see her 3 debut poetry and prose collections take flight, including Kamikaze White Night Noise, and since then she's published several e-zines and has been part of 2 anthologies. At the end of the show today, we will hear from the husband, but first, kicking us off screaming, this is the incredible Nicole I. Nesca.
La Notte Scorsa. I dreamt I was reading Howl to a phoenix. She leaned in so close that her heat became the color on my skin. I could see the dark centers of blue in her eyes where my reflection was captured in ash. The stage was lit with her glow in one single white bulb. Our audience sat in long rows on blue velvet chairs, silent. Each patron saint upright and holding mouths closed, straight backs stretched tall, hands folded and resting on polite laps. Stone figures guarding some great wall, some great sea. In the balcony, the angels were performing, distorted children from on high with eyes bulging and searching, paper horns blowing high-pitched tones of Alleluia, with wings ferociously flapping in time with unknown beats and casting shadows and light in my direction. And I heard the petals falling from the roses planted in your front yard. 1, 2, 3, 4. Mooncalf. Old men drooling, buying courage to have just one touch. Step out the back door for a cig, leaving friends and foes, finding places where faces melt in some phony, funked-out trip, laughing Lenny Bruce, groovy, desiring some thing. Nondescript, superficial scenescaping, landing, nodding, kind, keep moving, card-carrying, valley-proud, fractured mind club, hat worn low, Memeric's eyes, frequency flying, with tuned-up ear where the parking lot lovers, artists, and philosophers meet, where hearts and bodies fight for rights to mental containment. Contentment, knowing. No one looks too long or too hard in face. Ambulance screams in the distance, steel-nerved, unaffected, frightened only by the specials. Saints in some rock and roll choir, unglued and let loose. Poets stand silent, watching, listening to gunshot banter, capturing some feeling, some moment, some weakness, emotionally plagiarized and aggrandized like only a lonely angel can. Time is slipping, and dawn's color is spitting. I announce I'm splitting. Chitty chitty bang bang, kiss kiss, goodbyes, and all right till next time. Scene was supposed to fade into grays, blocking his goddamn rhythm. Sky's eye bright, still mocking as it, they, he, hauntingly pace my stride. Bang walls of skull, forgetting pictures, written melodramatic Dylan lyric, bathed in obscene light of the moon, exposing secrets held closed, stepping harder, faster to beat. Pinks, yellows, oranges, mornings, revealing the lines from story, crying like a fire in the sun. Indigo. I am nowhere, where there are no rules, and I feel cruel. My chest hurts and my fingertips are numb, and I am blue. I would kill a cricket should it pass by me now, just for crossing my path, just for singing its song, 'cause I feel cruel. My conscience screams to me, my hands are tied, my heart is racing, and I try to cover the fevered look on my face. And I am told that in love there are no rules. My limbs bubble and itch, and I am nowhere where there are no rules. And I am blue. Toodles. Silly spitting, swallowing, choking, viperous frenemy, fuck hell, damn, bullshit, dream, master bastards. Toodles and doodles to the rest of the bar in this place, Winnipeg and Youngstown, and all the other maps, points of pleasure and deranged thoughts of life as I know it and pretend to know it. Controlled, cut adrift from the life's blood of knowing who I was and would be. Rain war dancing on the hoods of cars of lovers who have gone by choice and because they were dismissed or missed or pissed, and I sing and I wail and I go slow and then fast and pause for the applause. Until it comes. I start again with new shit and a new fever and new aches and new pains, and I say it is fear. It is desire that brought me here, and I walk and work into the new millennium, afraid of the oven's door and the medicine cabinet, compared and repaired by the Sylvia factor, laughing, crying, sighing, and breathing in a single sound of silence, closing that door over and over until there are no rules. And I bruise, shaken from the very core of blood and bone, knowing that we are and always will be the pale dust of the gods. Chessboard eclipsed sometimes by the sun, and secretively whispering into my deaf ear, forming the words that I long to hear.
I am absolutely thrilled now to introduce you to our next guest, who is literally the smash hits of poetry. And if you've heard him read in a Zoom room like the ones provided by Black Bow Poetry, you will know exactly what I mean. He is an emerging writer and poet based in Surrey in the United Kingdom and was formerly mentored by Matthew Sweeney. This year, over at Blackbow Poetry, he was their featured poet in their spring online anthology, and over the course of the past year or two, he's continued to enthrall us all with his live readings in Zoom rooms. With a background in visual and therapeutic creative arts and decades of mental health care nursing, I am ecstatic to hand you over to the sensational Julian Day.
Hello, my name's Julian Day. I'm an emergent poet currently based in Surrey, and I want to thank you, Damien, for giving me the opportunity to share 3 of my poems on the Storms podcast. A blue flower for blue riders, after Novalis, for Paul Clay and Franz Marc. Grief is this blue horse smeared in a red ditch, the kick of blood inside, and it never stops, pouring. Sometimes it stops, hearts, the rider blue, like a spirit pulled, fugitively in their tracks. This grief bores into the wild war of worlds, lands a metal fist across Europe, splinters off, gets lodged in the nowhere trees and brains of men, lost to mudus and time. It branches off through trenches of pain, in slow-mo now and in rewind. My living room falls away like a shock of smoking fear, as I imagine, Paul, that you only wish it took less light from you. It might take more than time, take lifetimes more, numberless than angels calling, Franz or Franz, oh, de Blaureiter, oh, dear blue rider, for grief to be named at all. It blooms in a life like a milky wash of turpentine in death, mixed into a haze, a bottled cerulean sky, a perfume wafting a forest of sable brushes, gathering like wolves as you pick them, anointing each one in a glaze under a flower moon. The children of the Hydra came. The children of the Hydra came from the teeth of their dead mother, came back to haunt the living as you know what, came out of the ravaged ground as skeleton soldiers. They came carrying swords, spears and shields. They came ready-made to be the ruin of Jason and his Argonauts. They sprouted out of the earth to be commanded by the cursed magic of a mage, like in the Harryhausen movie. They kept coming and coming and coming. They came like scuttling scorpions, if scorpions could move on 2 legs. They came as they meant to leave the world, do or die. They made their exit, like so many zealots do, by falling over the edge. Nighty-night Vespers. I want to thank the pillows of night for their loveliness, but they tell me to shut up and sleep. I want to thank the strong brew of lavender tea before bedtime, but the tea is busy with silence. I want to thank you, the silence, for space to breathe, in between bouts of thinking anxious ants, but that silence has already driven off. I want to thank all the heavenly creatures dropping onto my bed through the skylight. You are stars.
Not only is my next guest the host of Thursday Night Zoomers, not only across Ireland but also the continents, thanks to being the co-founder of Lime Square Poets along with Dor Schaefer, but she is also the toast of our bookshelves thanks to being the co-founder of the journal Howl New Irish Writing along with Roisin Leggett Bowen and Alvin E. Garvey. This is the exceptional journal that had its inaugural launch just last year and just recently closed submissions for issue 2. But aside from the howling and the limes, she was also most recently the well-deserved winner of the 2023 Kirch New Writing in Poetry, judged by Sean Hewitt. She is from County Cork and has been awarded an Arts Council funding to go towards her debut poetry collection, and also it was a recipient of a Munster Literature Mentorship with Alfric McGlinchey. Making her debut on Eat the Storms, the poetry podcast, I'm so delighted to hand you over to the always stellar Lauren O'Donovan.
Hi Damien, thanks so much for having me on the show, it's an honour. I'm just going to read a few poems for my collection in progress that I hope will be out next year. The first one is called Latrina Vox, which comes from Latin and it means voices of the toilet. And it's a found poem from graffiti in a single women's bathroom. Collage is lonely. Any League of Legends players? This is the sign you asked for. My parents think nothing's good enough. Up the ra! I'm 29 and in love with a woman. For the first time I know who I am. Birds aren't real. Don't vote the same pricks back in on Feb 8th. I have an eating disorder. I just want to feel beautiful. Bird watchers everywhere are shook. Ross Mulcahy is hung like a horse. Repeal. My boyfriend says he loves me and I'm scared. I don't understand why he would. Any bags? My boyfriend says he loves me but would find me more sexually attractive if I was thinner. Love yourself first. You are yours. Tomato. Fuck him, then leave him. I broke up with him. Yay! I cheated on my boyfriend and now I'm pregnant. We are not retreating, just advancing in reverse. And the bullying continues in college. Any hash on tick? Any bags? I fuck up everything. YOLO. With a line through. You live every day? You only die once. Why can't my lonely ass find a decent man? Beyonce is ruining music. I might be pregnant and the fellas from Kerry, 50-50's gonna be a leprechaun. Bullying is in your head? Change your attitude. Coronavirus more dangerous than we're being told. Nobody knows I'm trans, but I'm still terrified using the ladies. I'm falling in love with my friend, but I can't tell her. Yes, you are. You are enough. Embrace your weirdness. Penis! I love Beyonce. This is your bathroom, and anyone who thinks otherwise can feck off. The next poem I have for you today is called The Day You Were Born, It Was Snowing. We drove along the harbour road to the hospital through soft mountains of feathers moulted by some god bird. I hadn't slept in 2 days. Labour was slow and I was high on the hormones of birth. The sleeping city looked pristine, stretched out under still ripples of white. It was so quiet. The snow absorbed all sound except the engine's warm thrum and your dad's anxious encouragement. I wish I could be back in that moment, our lights illuminating each flake as if the sky had laid a path of frozen stars for us to follow. About to see your face for the first time, bring you to my inexperienced breast. I don't remember much else until you were naked and wet on my chest, your skin streaked with creamy vernix, like feathers oiled from the egg, and I couldn't stop crying and laughing and crying. Binge. I make an excuse to go to the village. I grab my bag, the one with the zip pockets stuffed with scrunched coils of undone polo rolls and loose mints, buried like eggs in a nest of popped blister packs, body spray, cheap lighters, and a bottle of that green little hand sanitizer that eats all regretful scent except the chemical afternotes of itself. Then I'm in the garage shop, focused as a bolt, marching to the cashier, guarding those blank cabinet doors like they're filled with pornography. In response to my request, the cashier turns to search dispenser buttons. Their judgment is already spent on the slow tick of the shift clock, and there is none left for me or my life choices. I reach for the pack, after that digital tick of approval confirms I haven't yet burned all the money in the bank. I go past the petrol pumps, the car wash, far down the back of the lot, where there are 2 wooden tables with wonky cloth umbrellas. The whole area is sticky from scraps of fast food, left by teenagers in such a rush to grow up, there's no time to put rubbish in bins. The crows swoop down and shake containers of garlic mayonnaise, so seats and feathers alike get speckled white. I sit in my corner where a block of parked cars offer protection from sisters-in-law and moms from the school. I rip open the pack, remembering to zip pocket the little strip of plastic and silver paper, as I'm now 20 years disposing of the evidence of this crime, and I suppose that makes me a master criminal. I light the first cigarette, which is always the best, not just because of the heat in my throat, the relief in my chest, and the glorious rare silence now loud in my head, but because there are 19 more escapes left in the pack, and all consequence is abstract and far distant past that. When I did this almost 10 years ago, sitting on steps outside a supermarket, I smoked 3 in a row and then vomited into a reusable shopping bag. I swore then I would never smoke again, but over the years I guess I have improved in a perverse way, because now I can easily smoke 3 and as many as 6 before I start to feel sick, with a headache pecking the frown lines between my eyes. When I'm done, sated past the point of nausea, I walk to the red bin cheerfully emblazoned with immortal ice creams that never melt, only fade with age. I throw away the half-empty pack along with the butts I've gathered up, because an ornithologist friend once told me about a job where he had to cut open dead baby birds to determine how they died. They discovered the bird parents had fed their babies cigarette butts, one by one, like fat plastic worms. The butts filled the babies' stomachs like concrete, too big to leave and too jealous to let anything else inside. And so the baby birds starved with full stomachs, then died. Thank you very much. Thanks again, Damien, for having me here today.
And midway through today's show, I promised you a duo, and a duo you shall have, for it is now the time of the other half of Screaming Skull Press. This time we're starting out in Torino in Italy for an artist who was then relocated to Canada by the age of 3, raised in Winnipeg, relocated back to Italy several times before settling back in Winnipeg in the United States. He is a self-taught guitarist and originally a member of a rock band until at the age of 27 his guitar became a Commodore 64 and the chords became keys on a computer when he found a love for writing. He is the author of books including 6 chapbooks of stories and poetry, novels, and a spoken word album called Word Music, which you're going to hear today. I am delighted to hand you over not only to the poetic stylings but also the musical stylings of spoken word performer Tony Nesca.
Death does not want you today. Death does not want you today. Death in the oceans and rivers and up in dank clouds of morning, in deserts far away, in dark forests without music, in barrooms with sudden laughter, in the minds of young and old, in your neighborhood and across the water. Death does not want you today. And that should be enough, and that should be all. But we continue. And I see the long, swooning, easy afternoon with towering great trees mushrooming up top and the orange-purple leaves casting a shadow on the slick-paved, scarred-up sidewalks. My shoes beating that beat through the neighborhood like some old gangster flick full of machine gun tension. There at the end of my block on Garwood and Stafford Street, that air-conditioned 7-Eleven calling like a mirage in sun-scorched Easy Street. Right there, the sadness of it all hits me square in the jaw as common people do their common things, all beautiful and dead already. And the poets no longer scream in garbage-strewn alleys, and the teachers in nothing-doing classrooms realize the splendor and futility of it all. I accept that the end is just around the corner, always just around the corner. And with smile on face and those long worn Beatle boots making that crazy sound and rock and roll music as my guide, I see it come to me. To be free is the trick, ain't it? To walk among your fellow humans free of their ugliness and desires, to seek solace among the griff-filled rabble of Drunk Street and kiss them goodbye as they burn away, to spit in the face of all that's holy, and to hell with the working class and their common triumphs, to hell with love and marriage and home, town and country, and politicians who live every day only to lie, while taking your already dirty money and searing a hole right through the sky. Leave the family at the turnstile, I say, and revel at the inside of your head with ideas of many colors and hobo smile hanging from suicide ledge. Avoid the society suckers of today addicted to video game thinking and comic book realities that laugh at God and make those machines in your back pocket holy, you dig? The 20-something do-nothing boys shut into the brains of non-reality and cultural destruction. The filthy rich getting filthier with their psyche in a jar on their mantelpiece beside all the other trophy killing. So, live like the indigo-depressed suburbs of your neighborhood scorched away all at once, replaced by the midnight whorehouses of violent, gloom-drawn debauchery. Live like the final droppings of old age give way to long, easy afternoons on your front porch. Live like that shitty job you got dies suddenly and finally, and the bloodied skies open up, leaving the slavery of 9 to 5 dead on arrival. used to hang in the Osborne Village at the corner of River and Osborne, me and Crazy Kenny. He talking all sorts of shit and LSD just kicking in, and street kids riding their dune skateboards, and Crazy Kenny not crazy at all. He got that mind groove bent on destruction. He's peaceful and vengeful and almost holy. So the streetlights are painting the night orange, the Mohawk boys running wild in glory, the predators easy hunting, the village freaks hungry for so much more, the bums begging for truth, the buskers adding up the sweet fuck all, and goddamn the whiskey runneth easy, Kenny looking smooth and hippie glorious, talking nothing but wine and veritas. Sweet low-down hustler selling us latest marijuana high-time shivers. We smoke, we watch, we laugh. Gray-haired young lady blows kisses into the wind. Tough biker type screams in white light pain. Street painter sells his latest groove, and he looks bright and alone and sad, and the world sings in rhythm. When the rain is heavy and wild, you walk the streets shining and gray. The music soaked through gleams deadly moments torn from your sunshine memory and the sweetest smile. You think heavy glory under the brick house awnings, water pelting away up top. That high saxophone hangs in the air, then the piano eases its way in. And the barroom tremors cling like shadows, their gloom making it just right. Another one for me, Jack, you say, in the wild of the moment. Another thick sing-along beat, happy rumble. Crazy young girl in the deep blues of your night. She's doing on the bathroom floor, baby, blissful and tragic and forever laughing. The unreal happiness sets in with long, easy bursts. You crouch low, brain washed down in somber yellow, teeth bashing an uneasy truce. And what a sad, beautiful sound it all makes, don't it? When the rain is heavy and wild, you walk the ragged streets, soaked all the way through with that forlorn music, torn from your best sunshine memory. As a kid in the 70s in Winnipeg's Little Italy, living right across from my school, small house, tiny patch of green for a yard, neighbors eating their capicola fried pepper sandwiches on the back porch, blue prairie sky ever present, working class Joes mowing their lawns, in the forbidden sex game behind closed doors, us kids and mom watching my old man from the front window as he came from teacher-parent meetings, trying to judge from his walk whether news good or bad, whether sunshine, Big Papa living cool and easy, and the small, unnoticed moment alive and well. I can still hear the lost out-of-tune harmonica blowing the Blitzkrieg blues. I can still see my cousin Max running from the dog. My older brother moving in that cynical 1970s groove. My mother smiling sadly. My great-grandmother leaning to one side. My old man angry and forlorn. My grandfather working a night shift in my parents' bakery shop. And those damn dogs roaming the neighborhood, scaring the shit out of everyone, man. Crazy fuckers, tight skin, furry, underfed, vicious bastard. Where the hell did they come from anyway? They ran the streets like outlaws, chasing cars, bicycles, motorcycles, milkmen, kindergarten teachers, seniors, shop owners, baby carriages, teenage hippies. We were all targets to those psychotic devil mongrels, and we had names for them too. One was called Bob, tight black fur, skinny ass yellow teeth, long pointed and ready. Then there was Cindy, wild beaten down bitch covered in thick shag, eyes yellow like the devil's. But we called her leader Rusty, some kind of German shepherd cross, salivating at the mouth, fat belly, brown and maroon hide, disheveled and grizzled from all the back alley carousing, ill-fed motherfucker, man. And he didn't always chase people down. Most of the time he just hung out scavenging shit from garbage cans and running and fucking. Look, there's Rusty, I would say. Whoa, said Max, and there goes Cindy. Let's get the hell out of here, said Barney. But man, oh man, when the mood took them, when they had nothing else to do, no one else to hunt, they came for us kids. One day, Rusty and Bob cornered me and my friend Abraham against a tree. Mid-afternoon, sun low down and mean, birds singing their bullshit in the sky. Busy afternoon suddenly silent and dead, heart left in beautiful synergy. We stood frozen in time and space, and they howled and barked, and they showed us their fangs, and they got in close, nipping at our heels, and I swear those devils were laughing. But we stood still. No movement except for our lips telling each other to just stay still, boy. These lousy bastards gotta get tired. They pinned us there for the better part of the day, sticking and moving and howling like the perverted hellhounds they were. And that crazy friend of ours, Gordon, watched from the park laughing and pointing, till at a moment's distraction, Abraham threw a stick in his direction, and Rusty and Bob, following the stick, took off like lightning. And man, that asshole Gordon ran for his life with those vicious pricks on his French ass. What a day it was. What a day in bloody hell fairy tale reality. What a day in that brilliantly colored twilight. And I like to think those damn dogs still roam those filthy streets, and that Gordon still drives everyone dizzy, and myself still frozen, always frozen, by that beautiful tree, reaching for that beautiful prairie sky.
Oh, thank you.
And that was my lineup of poetic, shimmering, screaming, sensational stars kicking off episode 1 of season 7 of the Poetry Podcast. Thank you so much to each one of them. Nicole and Tony Nesca, Julian Day, Lauren O'Donovan and Andy Breckenridge. And Andy's recently published first collection, The Fish Inside, was published by Flight of the Dragonfly Press, and that can be ordered from their website. There is a link for that in today's blog post, which you can find at www.eatthestorms.com. Now, before I leave you today, in typical fashion, I'm going to share some poems with you of my own, and as it's the first episode back, I thought, why not share some poems from my debut pamphlet, Eat the Storms, because it used to be traditional that every episode back I read some poems from this pamphlet, although I might have forgotten to do that in the past 2 episodes, or the past 2 seasons, so apologies. And of course, the pamphlet is the reason that we're actually here, because in December 2019, I moved back to Ireland. Then in early 2020, of course, I got locked down, like most people, in a cottage here in Lusk, although not everybody was locked down in a cottage here in Lusk. That was just me and my mother. And then, of course, in July 2020, I began having panic attacks, more and more panic attacks, because my debut poetry pamphlet was about to be published by the Hedgehog Poetry Press, but nobody was going to know about it. So one sleepless night, while trying to figure out how to cope with panic attacks, having yet to learn how to live with panic attacks, I decided to start a poetry podcast. I thought, well, I'll just share some of my poems from the pamphlet, and really that was all I thought. I didn't think what would happen next, what I would do for the next episode. I just thought, well, let's start it. And now here we are. Thanks to all of you listeners, and to the incredible amount of support from the writing community and the creative community. We have now had over 475 poets who have taken part in the podcast, and we're still here. And I say we because this is not my podcast. This is a podcast for all of us. This is our podcast. So thank you all for making it possible. And now some poems from Eat the Storms, a pamphlet that I wrote while trying to understand, cope with and learn to live with panic attacks. This is the opening poem. It's called Meditation Under the Yellow Sun. I wanted to draw the sound of the moon on a sun-drenched beach, stripped down to white sand, white wave, white skin starved for affection, I wanted to draw the sound of that moon as the chaos of the current crashed upon crowds, clawing at each other below a spot of sunlight that burnt them quicker than they could contemplate contentment, while I sketched the white light of night circling the circumference of day. I wanted to put onto paper the possibility of holding stillness as all else moved, of leaning in to the moonlight while the daylight drowned out thought, of being able to hold silence in a song. I wanted to draw the sound of the moon as the yellow sun stripped the sea from the sand. Grains of sand beneath cerulean skies. Faith is fragile. Courage, not always conclusive. We do not command the waves, nor comprehend a cloud. I tell you, this sand will be swept into the sea by nightfall. This baying breath of cyan beneath the stretch of cerulean skies. This smooth, salt-licked land was forged from fire before you were born, when vultures had feathers instead of hands and knives, and volcanoes were all there was to fear. Faith is fragile. We cannot see what once was, nor what will come to be. We lie somewhere below the Caelian, searching for security on a spot of shore before the tides return and we, in turn, become grains of sand that some being will one day look upon and try to see what is no longer there. It is ours to be the basalt or to be something better. Green garden. Behold the moist moss. Early morning in green garden. Towering tree thriving through winter. The peace that dawns with the dew. The blue sky afloat on water. Stillness, absorbing, reflecting, meditating. The simple route the river runs. The rustle of red rose tipped with thorns. The flowering moonlight over stony soil. Those secrets spring whispers to summer's stock. Scarlet rising. Eat the storms, Mother said. Boil these beds of bitter blackness until the dream rips through the rain and translucent turns to trust. Even a diamond must ache in the darkness until compression can no longer conceal. Eat the storms, Mother said. Slip out of shivering skin until touch recalls the sweet music of scarlet rising, caught below the lick of leaf, lost in the shadow of the shade. Even the petal must rise above the thorn before it can dance in the light. Eat the storms, Mother said. But I didn't hear it at first. It takes time to swallow the truth and teach the tongue to taste the rain. Well, I hope you've had a good morning, good evening, or even a good afternoon with us today on Eat the Storms, the poetry podcast, as we have now officially come to the end of episode 1, season 7. Thank you so much for tuning in once more. A huge thank you to all of my guests who were Andy Breckenridge, Lauren O'Donovan, Julian Day, Nicole Nesca and Tony Nesca from the Screaming Skull Press. For details of all of my guests, as always, you can head on over to the newly brightened up Eat the Storms website. That is www.eatthestorms.com. And there, if you click on the podcast section called Listen to the Podcast, you'll find a blog post for every episode. And today's episode, of course, is episode 1, season 7. And in that blog post, you will find a photo, a bio, and social media handles or web links for each of my artists. Thank you so much to you, the listeners, for tuning in, whether that has been on Spotify, Apple, Google, Breaker, Podbean, Pocket Cast, Castbox, Overcast, iTunes, or any of the many platforms where we are now popping up. Now, while you're over at the website, you might as well pop along to the Storms Journal and read all about our submissions for issue 3 of the Journal of Poetry, Prose and Visual Arts. This time I will be joined by the superlative Congolese-Irish poet Niti Kasa, and we cannot wait to read and see all your contributions. We are very graciously supported by Fingal Arts, and speaking of Fingal, the Fingal Poetry Slam, in which I came third last year at the grand finals, is now on tour at the moment with its regional slams taking place, and on the 30th of May they are in Malahide, and I'm thrilled to say that their featured musician is our own Mairead Carroll, one of the contributors to our inaugural issue. So grab an Eventbrite ticket for that event, hosted by the brilliant spoken word performer, poet and also former Stormer from issue 2, Sheila Ryder. And the day after that, on the 31st of May at 7 p.m. in a Zoom room near you, with tickets currently available at eventbrite.co.uk, you can head over to Matt Gilbert's launch of his poetry book published by Black Bough Poetry called Street Sailing. Now, That's all for me for this weekend. Have a lovely Sunday, Monday, Wednesday, or whatever day it is that follows the day that you have tuned in. I hope the sun shines and your pen or your paintbrush finds its way to creation. I have been and shall try to continue to be Damien B Donnelly. This has been Eat the Storms, the poetry podcast, and until next time, stay bloody poetic.
Oh, thank you.